big green machine is back. 20 Minute Tims are back, covering Celtic for our 9th season. I'm your host Jamie, and I'm joined by Stephen.
What's happening?
And Melly.
Yes.
And all summer long, we've seen the comments on the Celtic forums. When are 20 Minute Tims back? Well, Celtic back, that means we're back. But Stephen, strictly, we didn't go away.
No, we didn't. I have an issue with people saying come back, because we never go away. We podcast twice,
We've
three
not gone
times
away,
a week.
you know.
We've not gone away, you know. Terrible. He's not Indian. I don't know why I did that accent there. But right, I've got a problem with anyone saying, oh, where are 20 Minute Tims? We love them so much to come back. And they do say that. They do say that on the forums. You love us to an extent, just not enough to get involved where it really counts.
Where is that, Stephen?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Jamie. Over to you for a plug.
It's patreon.com/20 Minute Tims. Just a wee minute to explain what Patreon is. It is somewhere where you can support this podcast in exchange for extra podcasts, extra videos, extra writing. And if you take out a 20 Minute Tims season ticket on Patreon, we will send you a fantastic t-shirt. Graphic will pop up here, showing you what that t-shirt looks like, and you will save a bit of money on your subscription. You get extra videos, you get to join the Discord, which is a fantastic online Celtic forum that we've created where you discuss everything. We're in there chatting about live games and all sorts of different things. You get extra podcasts, match reactions to every game. You even get an extra weekly podcast called The Breakfast of Champions, which is like the flagship's little brother. There's so much there. Check it out, patreon.com/20 Minute Tims. There'll be a link everywhere you get this and everywhere you hear it. Celtic are back, boys. Pre-season is over. The time for talking is done. The time for action began on Saturday, Melly.
Yeah, there was a lot of talking, not from Celtic as usual, and there's only one team that really talked the talk and walked the walk, wasn't there? Celtic came out and won. It wasn't the worst performance, it wasn't the best, but we done our job. I thought, fair play to Ross County, they actually had a go at it, but Celtic went out and done the business again. Not quite business as usual. There are wee things that we maybe need to tweak here and there, but I don't think it was that much different from what we've seen last season.
What a weekend.
Oh,
what a weekend it was.
Winning the first game of the season isn't for everyone, Stephen.
It certainly isn't. And obviously this is the first flagship proper of the season. We're fully back now. And the last thing we released on YouTube before this, now people will worldwide, all the screaming 20 Maniacs worldwide will be watching this, but the last thing released on YouTube was a little grenade. We thought we'd roll a little grenade and
Not like us.
Post and ghost, just disappear for a few weeks, right? And the last thing that was out on YouTube was a little YouTube short called That Lot Are Terrified, Brendan Rodgers is back. And
yes.
Oh, did we get the comments? We have suffered another several weeks of the comments from the Bears telling us we're talking nonsense, that they're going to do this season, they're going to do that this season. And did I not find about 100 comments, more so maybe, from the Bears telling us what was going to happen, and for them to serve that up on the Saturday evening of the first game of the season was terrific stuff.
It's not just YouTube Bears, is it? Todd Cantwell, once again, TikTok Todd can't help himself. He's posting things on Instagram with a wee 56. It's like they never learn. Every single season they do the talking on social media, we do the talking on the pitch, and that's where it happens. I think, Melly, you said there that Celtic were not too far off last season, and I want to kind of disagree with that. You and I did the Match Reaction podcast, which is one of the things I mentioned that we do for Patreon, and I thought the look of that opening game had the look of a team that needs a few adjustments, a few additions in key areas to get us back to the levels that we were performing at last season. If last season was 10 out of 10, that's about 7 out of 10 for me, 6, 7 out of 10, that performance.
Oh yeah, I'd say it's a 6, 7 out of 10, but I think if that was a run-of-the-mill league game last season, we wouldn't have thought too much about it. Like, I thought too against Ross County, fair enough. Goal in the last couple of seconds via a deflection. You're 3-0 up. That's fine. Ross County always score a set piece against us, so it wasn't the worst. But I think when we were expecting Brendan Rodgers to be back, we thought, right, big names are coming in. We'll go in and we'll just take this team from last season, add a couple of players, and we'll get better. But it didn't quite pan out like that in pre-season. We haven't quite seen the incomings we'd want, and it just felt like it was last season's team for me, with a couple of players out missing. Now, Jota's obviously left. We didn't have Starfelt to start. Alistair Johnson injured as well. So I think it feels like we're just missing a couple of players in there. That's why it maybe wasn't up to the usual high standards, but it's up to Celtic to go out and replace these players or bring in better players, because while we've still not replaced all the players that are leaving or could be leaving, we still want to improve from last season. So we need to bring in a couple of players to push on.
I think, Stephen, it stands to reason that the better players you have, the better performance you're likely to get. You're likely to get out of those players, and I think I was expecting, maybe my expectations were a wee bit too high because you never really know what's going on inside the club, but I was expecting Celtic to really burst onto the scene, Brendan Rodgers to explode back onto the scene. At the same time, it's difficult to do that when you've got no Rio Hatate, when you've got Anthony Ralston starting, when you've got the possibility of James Forrest coming off the bench to contribute, all these sorts of things. I don't think, and then obviously Nawrocki, is that the pronunciation?
Nawrocki.
He's making his debut. He had a bit of a cagey start, but I thought he came into the game.
Yeah.
For me, I just think we need to sort of understand what Brendan Rodgers is trying to do, and I don't think we're going to see that until he brings in some serious signings. I know he's brought in a couple of signings. We'll talk about that throughout the summer. But I'm talking about guys that you look at him and go, definitely first team starter.
Yeah, I think there was a huge amount of expectation going into this game for obvious reasons, because brother Brendy is back, right? And I think we've been away for a few weeks just as a support, basically just sort of building ourselves up almost to the point where it could only disappoint, because like we've been through the mill with Brendan Rodgers before, right? But even if Brendan Rodgers had never managed Celtic, if we'd appointed Brendan Rodgers for the first time this summer, there would have been huge expectations about what we're going to get going into this season.
We wanted a summer blockbuster. We wanted Brendanheimer.
Yeah, Brendan, that's right. And on top of that comes expectations with the budget, because all the talk was Celtic are awash with money, so sell one of our major players in Jota, and it all builds up to this sort of huge ball of hype. And I don't know if Celtic have necessarily lived up to it just yet. No, the game itself, Ross County, it was fine. It was fine. I just don't think it lived up to what we were building ourselves up for several weeks. In many ways, it kind of felt like it didn't really feel like a new Celtic. It felt like old Celtic because of what you've just mentioned there. David Turnbull is back in the team. Anthony Ralston plays out of necessity. I don't know having a go at any of these players, but these are guys who have been around for years now, and we kind of know what to expect from them. When we probably spent the summer wondering what this brave new world was going to look like once we get all these blockbuster signings in. Brendan Rodgers has stamped his authority all over this and spent 40 million and all that sort of stuff.
Do you think there's an element of, that was a season kicking off, and we probably should have been a wee bit readier for that, albeit we did win, and we don't really know. What Brendan wanted to assess the squad, which is more than fair enough. However, when he first joined, he said, I'm not accusing him of anything here, but when he first joined, he says, I've watched a lot of Celtic, I watched every game last season. Right, so he must have an idea of what the squad is like. And then you're seeing players like Liam Scales play pre-season, you're thinking, you don't need to assess Liam Scales. He's got no future at Celtic. Stephen Welsh has probably got no future at Celtic. So I just wonder how much squad assessment really needed to take place. And, a lot of business. We brought in some of the best players that we've signed in recent years in the latter stages of the transfer window. Some of them come in deadline day, so I'm certainly not stressing about the quality that's going to come in. But I just think from my perspective, I kind of expected a wee bit more. And, it's not Brendan's first day in the job, it's his first day of his second time doing the job.
Yeah.
But I kind of just wanted a wee bit more. I just wanted him to announce himself back on the scene a bit.
That plus John Kennedy's been here for years. I mean, he knows these players inside out, but better than anyone really, because managers come and go. John Kennedy's been the one constant in the backroom staff for years now. Like it or not, some people he still
just imagine John just lining the players up. You're not going to lose your job.
I suppose the meeting, I mean, I could only speculate, I could only guess what the meeting could have gone like, but I'm sure Brendan Rodgers has conducted a lot of conversations with John Kennedy about the squad over the summer, and maybe it's just the case that John Kennedy has probably said, look, you're never getting anything out of this guy. We'll give them a run out in the friendlies by all means, but it's kind of over for them. But maybe the likes of your Turnbull, Scales, maybe they're worth a run out just so you can get a look at them and make the final decision. But I'm sure that John Kennedy is more than aware of what the squad is going to be, or what use you're going to get out of certain players going forward. I'd be amazed if he doesn't, because what's he there for, if nothing else?
Yeah, looking back at previous teams, first game of the season, even Brendan Rodgers when his first stint, I'm not sure. Dembele didn't start that game, and I don't think Kolo Toure did. Obviously Sinclair come off the bench, so pretty much started that game with no new signings. Ange's first time around. What Starfelt had signed a couple of hours before, and Abada started. Kyogo comes on, so it's
Stephen
difficult.
Welsh scored the first goal of last season.
He did, yeah.
So it's
almost never seen again.
It's difficult to get everybody in and bedded in for the first game of the season, isn't it? It rarely happens, but you just thought Celtic were in a good place. A couple of players in, and we should be fine. The boat's been rocked a bit with certain outgoings, but I still think the squad's in a good place. And when you're looking at the team on Saturday there, it's still the exact same positions. I thought, we need to improve here. It's still the same positions.
What are those positions?
Goalkeeper for a start. I would have said left back as well, an attacking midfielder in the centre and a winger straight off the bat. And now if Starfelt's going to go, I think we need a centre back as well.
I think Millie's right. I think, Jota left ages ago now.
Yeah.
He's gone, and we need to, and I think we do need to replace him, because in that position you've got a Abada, guy who was never good enough to start over Jota last season.
No.
Just because Jota's left doesn't automatically mean Abada's good enough. And from what I've seen pre-season, I know there's a lot of talk online about how he's revitalised and he's looking good. It was more of the same for me. He's a good enough player. Anyone that listens to the podcast long enough knows we've got our opinions and frustrations with Abada. I think that's maybe too much of a step down from what we've seen last season. And Melly touched on something that I hadn't considered. You should always want to improve year on year.
Yeah.
As difficult as that can be sometimes, you really want to improve year on year, and you need to bring in players that are going to help you do that. So that sort of a Abada position, I think the one that he's addressed, but I think for me one that's become more and more apparent throughout the season, Stephen, is a goalkeeper, or throughout the pre-season rather.
Yeah, in Abada's case, I think we do sort of give Brendan Rodgers, because of who he is and what he's done before, I think we do give him allowances for the fact that he might have different ideas, a slightly different approach with certain players. He might simplify what they're doing. I mean, players have spoken about that before, but they've given new ideas from the manager that helps them improve as players. So I suppose we need to give these guys a chance, such as Abada. I mean, Abada, I'm talking as if he's a complete write-off. He's obviously a very, very good player.
Yeah.
Indeed,
You can imagine him in a Scott Sinclair role, can't you?
I mean, Abada's a very good player. He's been one of the best players Celtic have for the last couple of years, but there's no getting away from the fact that he did play less and less last season because Jota was preferred on that right side so that we could get Dyson in the team as well. But Joe Hart, that is getting more and more urgent all the time anyway, because this is the last year of his contract. So to go towards this final season of Joe Hart, and he has started to look a little bit shaky. And I know it's only pre-season, but I kind of reject the idea that pre-season is only about fitness anyway. I mean, ultimately they are preparing themselves for the rigours of a long and hard season ahead of them. It's not really just about getting fit, because if that was the case, then why is Haksabanovic not in the squad? He was terrible in pre-season, so it's not just about fit. It's how you. I want to be clear. Results don't matter at all. See if you go out and get gubbed off some minnows in pre-season where you're trying to get fit, that doesn't matter. But individual performances do.
I mean, if you include reflexes, flexibility, alertness, and the fitness bracket, those are the main concerns for me for Joe Hart. So there are things that you can garner from pre-season's individual performances, especially for Joe Hart. You're looking. Look, I love Joe Hart. We've been we've been staunch defenders of Joe Hart on this podcast. But I'm looking going, time catch up with every day. And he's I'm not saying get rid of Joe Hart, but I am looking now where Celtic are maybe in a situation with, we've got 3 second choice goalkeepers to sort of half quote Neil Lennon, because I think the goalkeeping position is now pretty critical, and I think it's one it shouldn't take too much to improve on that. It was easy to improve in Barkas because the guy was rubbish, and we did a very good job doing that with Joe Hart. I think it's now time to improve on that position, because my worry is I don't think it's out with the realms of possibility that the performances from Joe Hart, and we could see some of the stuff even against Ross County, wasn't ideal. So the performances, I can see Scott Bain back in goal if we keep Joe Hart, and Scott Bain's not good enough.
The thing of the Ross County, one of the goals, they looked a bit funny from the header that kind of looped into the back post over Kyogo. He just sort of came out, and it's in his
nowhere near it.
It's in his 6-yard box, and traditionally Joe Hart just doesn't like coming out. He doesn't really like being aggressive in that way in his own 6-yard box. The one thing I would defend him on, I think it was widely sort of derided in the stadium, but the thing where he chested it down and almost conceded a goal just looked ridiculous. But it was a mental Tony Ralston back pass. They kind of lobbed it over Carter Vickers' head, and Joe Hart probably should have headed it in hindsight, but he tried to chest it down and get rid of it there, but I don't know what he was supposed to do otherwise. But that aside, he's been starting to kind of creak for a long time, Joe Hart, and he's 36 now, and as you say, time catches up with everyone. I heard a conversation on a podcast recently about how goalkeepers can play a lot later than outfield players, and I think that's true. I'm not going to disagree with that, but I think that's maybe a slightly outdated view that you can play up to your 39, 40 and all that.
Look at McGregor for Rangers last year.
That's an example, and I don't think really any major dominant teams across Europe are playing with keepers in their 37, 38, 39 anymore. I think it came around in maybe the 2000s when Van der Sar signed for Man United from Fulham, and he was in his late 30s and was still incredible. So that sort of, again, it's not necessarily untrue that keepers can play later, but I feel like that's one of those positions in football that's changing, it's evolving all the time, and it's the game's speeding up all the time. It's all about reflexes, as you say. So I don't think it's still the case that you can just set and forget, just stick your keeper in and he'll play till he's 40 and then you can start to worry about it then. If the reflexes, and Joe Hart's had a long and successful career, that it's going to catch up with him. It might just happen that he's one of these players that gets old overnight and just starts costing points. That could happen with Celtic, and I don't want that to be the case. I am aware that it might be difficult to fill that position because we've seen what 5 million gets you in its Barkas, and that was a complete disaster. So it might be difficult to do it, but that's Celtic's job to take care of that. He's certainly going to be a
difficult player to replace, mainly because in terms of even the goalkeeping, he was a quality goalkeeper for us last year, and that sort of professionalism and attitude, people are sniffy about that, which is unbelievable to me. People are still sniffy about that, but the culture of a team is so important, and you need players to bring that culture. And you know, we might be looking at losing James Forrest. I don't think it's out with the realms of possibility. He's just had a testimonial for Celtic. Find it unusual that he's going to continue. He looked, for all intents and purposes, to be on his way out of the club. So you're losing James Forrest, a guy that knows what it's all about to be at Celtic. If you're losing Joe Hart as well, you need to bring in some of that sort of top-level, elite sort of mentality into the squad as well. I know people are sniffy about it. You see it all the time, and we'll definitely get the comments, well, you know, what is that attitude? Doesn't he stop goals? But it's 100% the case. And don't take our word for it. Listen to what the players have said about Joe Hart. Listen to what managers and his teammates have said about Joe Hart coming into the club, and the ethos and the attitude that he brought into the club. He became a senior player right away, and that just doesn't come with age. That comes with experience and the way you carry yourself, and they can see it. So I'm not being flippant. He's going to be a difficult player to replace for us. As Stephen said, we've had trouble in the goalkeeping department when we've went out and spent big money. Yeah,
it's just about getting the right guy. The Barkas thing just didn't seem to work out. But with Joe Hart, look, I've said it before, the perfect goal.
Stephen, did Melly say keepo?
I'm still in pre-season here. I'm
just learning Italian.
Warming myself up into this. I gave us a perfect goalkeeper at the perfect time for Celtic. Look, they could have went out and got somebody who's maybe better, but we needed that. And it's not just the professionalism that he brings. He's a guy coming to the end of his career, and the way he talks about Celtic and the way he cherishes every moment playing, he gives that to guys younger than him and goes, look, it'll all be over soon one day. He thought his career was sort of on the down, and he gets back to Celtic and starts winning trophies. So the culture, everything, the professionalism, the attitude, every time he's interviewed, he just talks about how he loves playing for Celtic. So I think that's going to be difficult. But if we go back to last season and you look at that sort of Celtic 11 that ended the season, you could sort of name it, can't you? It's pretty much the team is the best 11 we had. You look at that and go, right, where do we improve? I think we could have improved on Joe Hart, Greg Taylor and Daisen Maeda. We're still nowhere near doing that. And we've still got other positions that need plugged as well because players have left. So Jota's away, and now you're in a situation where you might have needed two wingers. We have brought in two in. So Joe Hart was right up there for me, not because he was costing Celtic, but it looked like he was going to cost Celtic very, very soon. And he doesn't look comfortable at all on the ball on Saturday there. The pass from Ralston wasn't the best, but his distribution wasn't good. The whole defence looked a bit shaky to start with. And if we are going to push on, we've seen in Europe, you need a keeper that's going to keep you in the game a lot of the time. Joe Hart didn't make a lot of saves for Celtic. Not that there was shots flying past him all the time, but you need that something different. And in Europe as well, it's critical to hold on to the ball. And Joe Hart he's not as good as that as other keepers, but it's a position we need filled. I think it's getting to the stage where it's possibly my number one position that I'd need filled. I just think we're going to get to that Alan McGregor point where he's going to cost us, and as you say, Scott Bain is not the answer, so it needs addressed now before it does cost us.
Summer's coming. Are you ready to unveil your beach bod? Manscaped is here to ensure your body is ready for the wild with their game-changing full body grooming and hygiene products. Don't be the guy at the beach with the Austin Powers chest hair, or it doesn't even have to be that, Stevie. You know that patchy way, sort of pasty, bit of hair on the shoulders. You don't want that either. If you grew some winter man tits, right, Melly? The least you can do is make sure they're hairless. It's time to get ready for hot guy summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with our code TIMS, TIMS.
Manscaped is dedicated to helping you increase your confidence and level up your full body grooming game with the Performance Package 4.0. The kit comes with the essential Lawnmower 4.0 waterproof cordless body trimmer and a ton of other liquid formulations to round out your grooming routine. Whether you're trimming your chest or the treasure chest in your pants, this is the best trimmer on the market. You also get 2 free gifts: the Shed Travel Bag, $39 value add, and the patented high-performance reduce chafing Manscaped Boxers.
Get 20% off all of this and free shipping with the code TIMS, TIMS, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code TIMS at manscaped.com. Trim your chesticles, the besticles. We could end up losing a couple of key players. We'll get on to the Hatate discussion, but it was quite telling to me that he didn't start and he not signed the new contract. There's been rumours swirling about him. We don't need to mention Jota again. We've spoken about it. Goalkeeper's a key player. I think we needed a centre half. I think we're starting. Another problem is the squad balance to me is a wee bit off, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think we always needed a centre half. We brought in Nawrocki. Looks decent. I thought he grew into the game. A shaky start, but he grew into the game, especially when he started stepping up and was encouraged by his teammates to get more involved. I thought he looked fine. He looks pretty strong. Decent passer as well. But that was, we needed him when we had Starfelt.
Yep.
And now Starfelt's going.
Yeah.
We need another one. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, Nawrocki's probably the Starfelt replacement. They look very similar. They're similar height. We paid similar money for them. You know, it's one in, one out. But we still need another one because Kobayashi looks as if he's rumours that he's going to end up back on loan to Japan.
I know he's injured just now, just in case anyone corrects us on that. He's injured just now, but I mean, we're going back further than that because he'd lost his place previously to Iwata at the end of last season. It hasn't really been seen much since.
So Stephen Welsh, he's been linked away, and these are two players that probably need to go. So we need another centre half in, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, Nawrocki's a good start. He looks good, and what I noticed about him against Ross County was there was one. Carter Vickers played a kind of pretty crisp pass across to him. He controlled it first time and passed it wide to Dyson. I think with his left foot pretty much just took a touch and passed it. Starfelt doesn't do that.
Much more comfortable on the left-hand side.
That's the major complaint we always had about Starfelt. Is he as good a defender as Starfelt? That remains to be seen. I've seen comments, you're always going to get them, but people get excited about new signings, but I've seen comments about how he's a clear upgrade on Starfelt. I mean, I don't know how we're judging that on an hour because
super mega brain if you could decide that already.
Yeah, I mean, Starfelt has been brilliant. I know he's 1 foot out the door, just basically as good as gone now. But he's been brilliant. I mean, he's a treble winning player involved in one of, if not the best partnership I've seen since I started going as a kid. So I don't want that to be just dismissed. Oh well, Starfelt's gone, this guy's much better after an hour of football. He might turn out to be much better than Starfelt, but I don't think we can judge that just yet. But he does look good. I think it's a promising start from him. But really, as you said, it's 1 in, 1 out. So really, does it benefit us? Does it improve us in any way?
Out, doesn't it?
Even if he is 15% a better footballer than Starfelt, who's a wee bit younger than him as well, we've still only got that one position next to Cameron Carter-Vickers. The rest is a bit of a grab bag of players who come in and out. Iwata, I'm not interested in Iwata at centre half or right back or anything like that.
That's the thing with a lot of the positions we've got at the moment, Ellie. You've got your good player and then the player down is just not good enough. And there were players last season who I thought might have been good enough, and there's players you don't know about. So you think to yourself, right, if one of the centre halves gets injured, we've got Kobayashi there. Now, we didn't know anything about Kobayashi, so we thought, he might actually be he might be an upgrade on what we've got, he might be better than Welsh. You can pretty much write that one off. Now, we've seen Kobayashi, we know he's not the answer, we know Welsh is not the answer. So it's the drop-off there, and as Stephen said, Iwata at centre half, he's not centre half, you don't want to shoehorn him in. There's talk of him getting shoehorned in at right back. That never happened either. So it's another key area for us. It's kind of crept up on us a wee bit. Yeah,
because this time last season we went out and got Jens, didn't we? And we thought maybe not going to take Starfelt's place, but he's a decent enough backup. We got Kobayashi in. He's not as good as Jens, and we went into Champions League games with Jens and Welsh as centre backs. Can't do that again this season. It has to be Nawrocki, Carter Vickers, and another who is of a decent calibre, linked with all sorts of players, but we never know what's going to happen. It seems to be until Celtic have near enough done deals that they're getting put out there, but we definitely need 3 decent centre halves.
Fabrizio Romano never has anything on us, does he? Except outgoings. There's never any good news with Celtic.
Absolute downer all summer. Every single time I got an absolute sick of that guy. But it's very quiet, isn't it? It's been very quiet. No, I'm being patient with Celtic's incomings just now because I have signed a load of players and some look good, some look as if they're ready to go straight away. Home in particular, I'm quite impressed with. I'm being patient because if it truly is how we think and hope this window is going, with Brendan Rodgers, big blockbuster manager, massive budget and all that, it might just well be that Celtic are stepping into a market higher than we're used to. We all hope so. We all hope we're going in for that sort of £7, £8, £9 million. I know we've done it with Edward before, but it's not the norm, is it, for Celtic to make those signings? We've stepped into that market and just found it just takes that wee bit longer now. I know some major clubs have done business. I mean, Arsenal have thrown around money. It's no one's business, but it may well be that the players we're going for have options. They've got better agents, better management behind them, urging their clients to bide their time. Let's see what happens in England and see if the sort of dominoes start falling. We can get you a move to such and such. It might just be the case. I'm choosing to look at it like that.
Well, that's the thing. You see a lot of that, don't you? Because there's been so much football, especially while I was doing the podcast, you get to see all sorts of stuff happening, and you can literally pick. If you're sitting here and you're worried about the lack of signings, you can pick, as you say, well, business gets done at the end of the season, but then you can go, but we've actually signed some good players. Like, there's no right or wrong. We're just sitting here shitting it. We're just three guys shitting around trying to figure out what's happening. Now you can choose whether or not, as you say, Stephen, you want to take the more optimistic thing. You can think, well, Brendan Rodgers came in, assessed the squad, we went to Japan, then he comes back and he starts to look at the players after the Japan and the pre-season, and then he's got a more solid idea of what he wants, and then he sends players away. But then you think to yourself, well, Nawrocki just turned up and like that, we signed a £5.5 million centre half. You know, it's like, you wonder sometimes, I don't know if it's just my paranoia, but the thing with Brendan was always transfers. That was always the thing, and I'm not putting a downer on it, and I'm not saying that this is definitely happening, but it's been very low key, and a lot of these signings that have come in have definitely been club signings. You know, they're not Brendan Rodgers has not identified these guys as key signings. They're club signings, and that's fine. That's what we do, and you know, the club are taking an approach on some of these guys, and that's absolutely fine. But I just don't know. I'm not worried, but nerves are creeping in a wee bit.
He's not went in the bed yet, but he's getting close.
He's taking a big old drink before going to sleep.
Too much H2O before bed. I kind of don't know what to make of it anymore, because people say, well, where's the Rodgers signing? So is it bad, lol, good Rodgers? Is that how it's
No, I don't think it's anything to do with it. I think it's when you go and sign, you know, I think the way Celtic work is they're constantly trying to sign the best talent they can get their hands on. I think that's a given, right? And I think when Brendan was asked about the Nawrocki signing, he basically said, I don't know an awful lot about him. We needed a centre half. The club had a list of players. He was on the list. I had a look and I was happy with him, and we went and got him. And I think that's the way it works. I think some players every player's given the Brendan Rodgers, you know,
seal of approval,
right? To a greater or lesser extent. However, I don't think for a minute Yang was brought in to replace Jota. No. I don't think that's the case. I think Yang was a player we've watched for a while. We think we can develop him. We think he can contribute. We think he's a good player, and we've got contacts in that area because we've obviously brought in so Yang arrives and he's an option on that side, probably to take, for example, James Forrest's place, and then he sort of can maybe break into the squad. That's fine. But I don't think, for example, if Brendan goes, go get me a right winger, one of the Lols or anyone at the club's going to go, we've got Yang, so shut up and use him.
No, I still think there'll be incomings. I think Brendan Rodgers will get.
By the way, Yang looked decent when he came on. By the way, I'm just using him as an example.
Brendan Rodgers will get his players, but I'm just not sure like football works like club signing, Rodgers signing anymore, because isn't the whole thing what we wanted was continuity? So if a manager leaves, we've still got everything going on in the background.
There's no denying that there's been Ange signings. You know, if Ange wasn't here, we would never have signed Kyogo.
No, but
or Hatate.
But we've never had a manager like Ange that's come from.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just mean the manager. I just mean we're not living in a situation the manager has no input. You know, there is at Celtic the capacity for a manager to go. Like, for example, if Brendan Rodgers went, listen, I was out watching a couple of games in Spain last year. There's this guy who plays for Granada. He's absolutely tremendous. Can we go and try and get him? Then the club would work to try and get him.
But the way I'm looking at it is, like, Brendan Rodgers has been in England for what, 4 years, 4 seasons. So any player he's come across is pretty much out of Celtic's budget. Yeah. So there's not going to be players he's coming well listening to.
We were like with Harry Suter today, and he signed for Leicester for 15 million quid or something last year. That sort of shows you.
You're looking what, loan at best probably. So Brendan Rodgers,
he's a massive Rangers fan, so I don't want anyone near the club.
But even since Brendan,
a club welcome to all. Not for me. Nah.
I don't think since Brendan Rodgers' first spell, I think football's moved on dramatically as well. I don't think there'll be this sort of Scott Sinclair where he can go and get me that guy. I just don't know if that exists for Celtic anymore. And I think with the way football has changed so much, I don't think Celtic will be planning for Ange next season at the end of last season going, right, here's a list of players we're scouting, what do you think, Ange? And then as soon as Brendan Rodgers comes, go, right, fling them in a bin and we'll go and get the Brendan Rodgers players. Celtic can sign the players they can sign. They've probably got a maximum budget, maximum wages they can go to. And is Brendan Rodgers coming in going to dramatically change that? I'm not sure it is. We might have a bit more pull with Brendan Rodgers being there. We might be able to push out a bit more, but look, we all pretty much trusted Ange with our lives, didn't we, towards the end of it? So I don't see why Brendan Rodgers coming in is going to completely change the landscape of football. Ange did have it different, but look, Mark Law came in as well, and Celtic signed these guys from Asia as well. So we've obviously expanded the scouting. It's something we've wanted a lot, but I get what you mean. We've just not had that Rodgers impact yet, where we think, right, this is it. These two guys are coming in. They'll play every week, like Scott Sinclair and like Dembele sort of thing that you go,
that's it.
They're just going to play and that's it. We've not quite had that yet, and I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, obviously we will know, the club will know, Stephen, that players are leaving before we do. That is obvious. So we will know Starfelt was leaving weeks ago, so the Narodsky signing now looks to be a Starfelt replacement now, because obviously the club knew ahead of time. And you're looking about and you're going, well, so if Turnbull's back in the team and Hatate's not starting games, you're looking into that and you're thinking, is this another position we need to improve on? I said in the post-match, like, I don't mind David Turnbull's a player. David Turnbull would be by far and away the best player in this league if he played for anyone else. At the time. And was at the time. We paid good money for him. Won Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year in the same season that we don't want to talk about. The poor guy. He's always, I wonder if he's kept those awards.
Him and Sorrow were a breath of fresh air that year, weren't they?
So I just
look at them now.
But I just think he is. It's my personal preference a lot, right? I just think he's a massive step down from Hatate. Hatate's way more dynamic, way more powerful. I think he's so much quicker on the ball, and he just makes that team tick so much better when Hatate's playing. And I really don't want to lose Hatate. And also, this sounds harsh, right? But I don't want to see David Turnbull back in Celtic, because we've always said it. We've said this before in the podcast, that there's a line of quality that exists in the squad. And if you're not good enough to go over that line, you don't play. And that has been David Turnbull for a season or so at Celtic. Just not so good to get in the squad. If he starts to play, that just means that the tide has came down a wee bit, and he can break into the squad, because he's not getting any better as a footballer.
I mean, I don't think that's too controversial. I think that's undeniable.
It is if David's
really.
watching, or his family.
I think that's fairly undeniable. If we go from...
Guy's mugging me off. Is it a date in this stupid shirt?
Krusty the Clown.
Kill Jester. You could draw the line there. David Turnbull played a lot in Ange's first season. He was pretty much played every game he was available for.
Till his legs collapsed.
Yeah, then he could play no longer. But then came along a certain guy called Ray Hatate who basically took his place. He plays for 18 months, solidly becomes one of the players of the team, one of the top 3 or 4 players in the country, and then he's replaced by David Turnbull again. So I think that's
why people like me on podcasts are questioning it and being worried about it.
I think it's fairly logical to look at that and say, well, hold on a minute, we went way up and then kind of dropped away back down again.
Do you think there's anything in these things that people are talking about Hatate's sort of pre-season demeanour?
Maybe. I think, like, unless there's anything going on behind the scenes, which I sort of leave room to be the case, that unless that he's on the verge of a move to Brighton or whatever the chat has been all summer. Because I remember thinking that at the time. I think was it Ayer started to play a little bit less and less in pre-season or something like that, and we wondered, like, he might have a move basically about to go, and that's why they're just leaving him out. So I wonder if there's anything kind of foot with Hatate at the moment. But it could be a combination of that plus, like, you've been rotten in pre-season. I mean, but rotten's very strong. He scored that cracking goal, but prior to that, who was that Athletic Club who scored that lovely goal? Prior to that, it was very, very erratic, very inconsistent.
Would it worry you to lose Jota, Tate, Starfelt,
massively,
and Hatate out of the team? That's 4 solid players for us.
It's not even just that. Last season, it was McGregor, O'Reilly, Hatate, and Moy all fighting out for free positions, and then Turnbull, and then Iwata sort of comes in, for then to lose Moy, and then Turnbull to suddenly be sort of 2 places up than he was last season. You're like, hey, the qualities went down a bit.
We've brought in Holm, who looks all right, obviously. But, I mean, in that midfield, and we've got Kwon as well, but he looks like, again, probably a bit of development before we see him starting many games for Celtic required. But we've got Itaguchi, McCarthy. We've got all these. They're still on the books. Now, I'm not saying they're going to play, but you're looking at that midfield area and it's starting to look. I mean, that's wages, and if James McCarthy's on, what was his contract? Was massive. Was
it's on 2 years, mate.
Like, so he was on like a 5 year. So these guys are taking up resource that are preventing us going out and improving the squad. Now they're more than entitled to do that. I'm not saying they should just walk away because I want them to. But you're like, how much wiggle room is left to bring in another central midfielder? Because we need to get some out.
We're sitting there, we're equally pouring scorn and looking at Saudi Arabia with side eye saying, oh, this is terrible for football. This is the end of modern football. But also, could you do us a solid here and take us?
Nudging James McCarthy. Get the factor 50 on, son. You're going to Jeddah.
Could you overpay us some of that filthy blood money for some of our bids? We draw the line. We've all got morals, but to an extent,
we want to win some football games. Yeah, I think losing Hatate is sort of pretty unthinkable for me. Really, it'll be a really difficult player to replace.
Impossible, absolutely impossible. You get certain players that come along for Celtic and they're just different from anything you've seen in Kyogo and Hatate, even Jota and Carter Vickers. They're the ones that made this team tick. I know Cal McGregor's there, but he's an ever present. As in, these guys coming in just breathed life into Celtic recently, and to lose a lot of them, even like guys like Starfelt, when Starfelt plays alongside Carter Vickers, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. These guys just came in and done well, but look, everything changed with Ange coming in. There seemed to be a quicker turnover of players, but at the same time, you were looking at that squad saying we've never been in a better position. But the more of them you lose, it just seems to be.
And we'll learn new things about players as well, because last season we were sitting going Haksabanovic, great option, great player off the bench. I know you don't read too much into pre-season, but he's been terrible. He looks
not even in the squad.
Not even in the squad. I mean, and Bernabe as another one. Not even in the squad, and he did okay pre-season.
That's a real puzzler for me. The
was
Bernabe
Ange
one.
a fraud?
It's a bald fraud.
I mean, there's 45 million. There's 4.5 million on Bernabe. There or thereabouts, wasn't it? He was big. He was decent money, and it's, as you say, like you're in a good position, but the more you learn about the players over the past season, you're going, can Bernabe be relied on? Brendan Rodgers said pretty much no, he needs to work on his defensive stuff. Haksabanovic to me is starting to look a bit like a carbon copy of a Yeti, maybe worse than a Yeti, because Yeti played some games when Ange first came in and looked okay, but there's just this sluggishness about Haksabanovic, and he's no really performing, and I don't know if he's maybe been told that, Brendan's I've assessed things and I don't really see a place for you in my plans. But again, he was one that we considered an option. Bernabe was one considered an option. Now, going into this new season, I don't.
See if we are looking at it and Jota's left and no left backs come in. If Bernabe and Haksabanovic can't even make a bench of 9 players, you're looking at it going, there's nothing, it's no looking good for you. I mean, for James Forrest to be on the bench ahead of you is criminal at this stage of your Celtic career.
Sorry to jump in there. It's not just the numbers on the bench either. It's the makeup of the squad. So you've got Kwon, you've got Iwata, and you've got there was another midfielder, I'm sure, Home all on the bench, but you can't find any room for Hatate. Of course, that was the other one I was looking for. And you can't find a room for a fullback, which we don't have any cover for whatsoever. And that's what Alistair Johnston injured. Yeah. So he's due to come back. Presumably then Ralston will just be the cover for both positions. Then Bernabe's completely bombed out of the squad again. And he's had
we
so
probably
many.
need a left back because Greg Taylor's okay under Ange, but this sort of, if he's going to be the marauding fullback again,
I just find it's puzzling with Bernabe. He's had so many unexplained absences from the team, and I remember he lost his place, or he kind of disappeared from the squad last season, and there was some chat that he'd just become a dad for the first time, right? So, but it was ages he was away for out of the squad altogether. But then at that point, we had no cover whatsoever. So he was away from the squad, and then that's happened again. So we've got no fullbacks on the bench whatsoever, 4 midfielders, 2 right wingers, and no space for your only fullback cover. It's just so puzzling. when you consider on top of the fact that he looked quite good in pre-season, scored a cracking goal, scored a weird gool where he set himself up.
Yes, that was a bizarre.
With a shocking pass straight in the wing.
The pass so bad it flummoxed the opposition.
He assisted himself basically from his own half, it seemed like. But I mean, he's been there, he's been contributing, he's been looking good. So really the kind of complete opposite of Haksabanovic. Both of them are out the squad, but Bernabei looked all right.
Look, we're not sitting here saying it's a disaster.
No.
Celtic, we need to tear up everything, but we're saying, the more you find out about the players, which is what pre-season's for, the more you look at the players on the fringes, and the more that players that looked as if they had promised last season, like Iwata, Kobayashi, Haksabanovic, and Bernabei, you're now looking at these guys going, how much are you really going to contribute? Then you've got players like Forrest, who's a year older, and other guys that I mentioned that you have just been bumbling about the club so long that they kind of need to go. It's kind of the game, Melly. You really want to go Celtic and Football Manager, don't you?
Yeah.
Get rid of all the deadwood, free up all that wage money, and then go out and bring in the players you really want.
Yeah, Brendan Rodgers in his first spell talked about, look, the squad was too big, but again, every season we go into this with a bloated squad. Players come back from loan that you forget about, and they're just kicking about. Like, you don't even see a Yeti and Sorrow in the training pictures or anything like that.
Just at Mikey Johnson next time.
Well, he's
God, I
injured.
forgot about him. Wow.
He's injured at least, but we're kind of one injury away from McGregor. Get to left back, son. We've got enough midfielders to do it, but it's kind of, the squad is a bit lopsided now with midfielders. It does need a bit of the fat trimmed, but what we really need is quality in. We don't need MD coming in that's going to be, you know what, he might be a good player. We need guys coming in and hitting the ground, not hitting the ground running with their performances straight away, but coming in and going, right, you are going to be starting or coming on and contributing every game. With Yang, Kwon, we just don't know what we're going to get with them. Novotny, look, I think he'll be fine. Really impressed with him as the game went on. Looks far more comfortable left-sided than Starfelt, but we'll see if he's going to be good. But we've still not addressed the quality in the squad. It's not went up a level. It's
I'm convinced
dropped.
it will, by the way, because this has turned into, we don't really plan these podcasts as much. We've got sort of bullet points that we want to make sure we hit, and I'm just conscious listening to it that this has sounded a bit of a negative podcast, and we're moaning a bit about the state of the
Could be
squad.
worse.
It could be worse. Tune in the Rangers podcast if you want to laugh. I just want to say, we're not sitting here terrified about the state of the squad. I'm pretty confident that Brendan Rodgers has no come back to sit here and skirt around the edges of the squad. At the end of the day, if Brendan Rodgers goes, I need a central midfielder because the 5 that have arrived here that are playing, and I'm talking about the guys that are never going to play, I'm sorry, they're no good enough. The Celtic need to suck it up and find the money for him. If Brendan Rodgers wants a right...
they find it, he's got 30 million.
Well, that's it, they've got the money, but if he goes and says, look, I need a right-footed left winger, which is apparently another priority for him, go get it. Back the guy. Don't say, well, actually, we've got this, we've got that, we've got Forrest, we've got Mikey Johnson. Brendan Rodgers has already made his mind up. These guys aren't good enough. Go out and get me the players I want.
And it's going to become even more important soon because, look, Celtic are joint top of the league with everyone else who won at the weekend. So every other team that's on 3 points just now are technically joint top of the league. Not all of them, but all of the teams that won at the weekend are joint top.
How did Michael Beale get on? Putrid little man.
Don't little anymore.
No. See, I know.
Oh, he's looking. He's been enjoying his summer, hasn't he?
Gravy guts.
he's been eating the squad's dinners, Felix. But
Jeez,
he's been eating
so low into fat shaming. We should be above that.
Eating
sort of
Todd
thing.
Cantwell's dinners, Felix. But we've got the Champions League coming up.
Yeah,
we need quality for that. No,
imagine we'd qualify, Steve.
I know. Imagine it. We'd all be panicking right now. This really would be a disaster. This podcast, but we all just want to feel better about it. No, I've said numerous times in the past that it's very easy to say go out and get Champions League quality, and very, very difficult to deliver that because as much as people say that, go out and sign somebody ready for the Champions League. Celtic never do that. Yes, players go on to prove themselves ready for the Champions League after the fact. Because anyone saying Dembele was Champions League quality, he was a 19-year-old that signed for Fulham. He'd never been near the Champions League. We found out later that he was Champions League quality. So my point is, it's very hard to say go out and get Champions League quality because we don't know what that looks like without spending 40 million on someone.
Speaking of Dembele, sorry, but Steven Gerrard signed him.
I know.
You're talking about managerial contacts, and I'm looking at this, and he's going, oh God, I didn't expect to be a manager. Get me Dembele, Jordan Henderson. Jesus, man, it's look. I think the video of him that emerged for Saudi shouting at a poor Saudi Arabian in a Scouse accent, like that is a man so out of his depth. It's unbelievable.
It's Tony Adams.
I know, but I was so shocked when I saw that he would want to sign Jack Hendry, man. I mean, just shows you the idea. Jack Hendry's obviously loving it.
Probably the most highly paid Scottish footballer of all time now.
Someone said that.
Yeah.
Someone said he might be. However, I had to think about it, and I think Darren Fletcher was on big cash. He was an important player for Man U at a time.
Andy Robertson's
Robertson
been on
and
big.
Tierney will be up there. They'll be in six figures a week.
Yeah.
Both of them, I assume. But
Darren Fletcher wasn't making washers at Man U.
No, certainly not. But Lord knows what Hendry's on. And
I think he's on 60 grand a week or something. Something like
I
that.
thought it'd be more than that, to be honest.
When you apply,
Tax free?
When you sort of, now the people talk about film takings adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
When you add the sort of Jack Hendry tax onto 60 grand a week for who he is,
Yeah.
he kind of is the highest paid player of all
you mean
time. Really.
Payment versus value?
Yes, exactly. They've thrown crazy money at that. But where was it going? Oh yeah, sorry, the Champions League. But all we want to do is feel a wee bit better about that. We want to feel like the squad is going somewhere. And yes, we are getting these additions in here and there, but no one that it's been said already on this podcast that no one feels definitively, right, this is a big statement so far. Correct. Even Nawrocki, who's the biggest signing so far, is just he really is just plugging that hole left by Starfelt, who he's not even out the door yet, but all he's doing is replacing a guy who's done a great job for Celtic so far, and he's going. Yeah,
even if we get 3 players in, I know that seems like a lot right now, but the quality can just go up and you go, I feel a lot better. But it's not just that. You want to feel that this is Brendan Rodgers' team rather than Ange's team. So if we do lose a couple of games, it's no that, we miss Ange and all that. You want Brendan Rodgers to be able to put his stamp on it and say, this is my team. Because when you look at Ange coming in, he had to just tear it all apart, didn't he? And even when Neil Lennon came in, after a window or two, like Rodgers' players were all gone. So teams evolve very quickly after a manager leaves, don't they? So you want Rodgers to be able to put his stamp on it and go, look, this is my team now. We just need those players to come in. I think they will, but it's still early days. There's still, 3-4 weeks to go in the window. He's won this week, come on.
We want Celtic to spend big money, but we want you to spend small money. On patreon.com/20minutetims, you can support this podcast to get loads of content for less than the price of probably an expensive pint a month, or if you even want to go, less the price of a Happy Meal. Subscribe to us. If you watch us on YouTube, the majority of people that watch us don't actually subscribe, so that's another thing you can do. It doesn't cost you anything. You can support us in that way. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening. See you next week.